According Russian legend, Catherine the Great traveled to Crimea in 1787 to see her recently captured territory. Grigory Potemkin, Catherine's lover and the man who was in charge of incorporating Crimea into the Russian Empire, aspired to win over his mistress. However, the country was destitute and broken. According to folklore, Grigory intended to construct charming but fictitious villages all along Catherine's route so as not to let her down. Grigory gave the order to erect newly painted building facades. Peasants were instructed to stand alongside the road with smiles painted on their cheeks, and one herd of animals was moved along the route to give the impression that the countryside was teeming with livestock. The phrase Potemkin village is said to have originated when Catherine allegedly passed by the play without realizing she was being tricked. Since then, historians have disproved the notion as an exaggeration. Potemkin villages, on the other hand, are what we refer to as these fake cities created to resemble actual places. Here are 10 of the most intriguing Potemkin villages in human history. 10 North Korea Kujongdong. The North Korean settlement of Kujongdong appears to be any other town when viewed from a distance. It was constructed in the 1950s in the demilitarized zone DMZ, which divides North and South Korea, and resembles a typical town with well-kept residential structures. A closer inspection reveals, however, that there is no glass in the windows, the lights are on timers, and the only persons present are maintenance staff. The settlement is a whole fabrication. There is nobody there. It just exists for propaganda. Its goal is to portray North Korea as a lovely and affluent place to live. If anyone had any remaining concerns, the city broadcasts anti-Western propaganda loud enough to be heard in the neighboring South Korean town of Daesong-dong, along with communist operas and marching music. 20 hours a day of propaganda is broadcast in an effort to persuade South Korean villagers to move north. The strategy hasn't been successful thus far. Number 9. Nevada's Doomtown. Who would want to live in a city called Doom? Thus it's a good thing Doomtown is a made-up location. During the Cold War in the 1950s, Nevada was a very popular location for nuclear weapon testing. The US government is thought to have conducted roughly 1,000 nuclear weapons tests in the desert not far from Las Vegas, where the mushroom clouds became an unusual tourist attraction for those blissfully ignorant of radiation damage. Scientists built mock villages to drop the test bombs on to see what would happen to a real town if an atomic bomb were dropped on it. They constructed real homes, outfitted them with furniture, filled them with real food, positioned automobiles along the streets, and populated the region with dressed mannequins. The goal was to determine what may withstand a nuclear explosion. The real answer was, not much, as it turned out. Number 8. Town in World War II. Airplane camouflage. How is an airplane factory hidden, disguising American aircraft factories during World War II? Over a Boeing warplane facility on the West Coast, the American government built a fictitious village during World War II. To hide the factory from potential Japanese bombs, Boeing Wonderland, also known as Boeing Plant 2, was constructed. The factory in Seattle wasn't the only one. There were many artificial cities constructed, one of which was in Burbank, California, to safeguard the Lockheed facility. In order to construct false homes, walkways, fences, trees, and vehicles, the government had little trouble hiring the top movie set designers and large-scale painters because these so-called plants were close to Hollywood and the nation was patriotically motivated to win the war. It seemed like a real community from above. The trees were made of burlap and chicken wire, the buildings were 4 to 6 feet tall, and the greenery was painted on real runways. In order to give the impression that the grass hadn't been watered, some of the yards were even painted brown by the designers. Number 7. Prague, Czech Republic. Theresienstadt. This entry is quite depressing and dismal. Germans controlled Theresienstadt, a concentration camp, during World War II. The living conditions were appalling, and the residents lived in constant fear of being deported. The camp was intended to house Jews while they awaited deportation to other killing fields and forced labor camps. In June 1944, the Nazis gave in to pressure and allowed the International Red Cross to visit the camp. However, a veneer was built to hide the terrible ghetto conditions that lay beneath, much like Grigory's fabled phony towns put on for Catherine the Great. Prior to the visit, houses were painted, gardens were planted, and thousands were sent to Auschwitz to relieve overcrowding. When the visitor left, the fun times came to an end and things returned to normal. The Nazis' use of a film depicting Theresienstadt being decorated as a spa town, where elderly Jews may safely retire, was among their most heinous acts of propaganda. Number 6. Florida's depicts the American government studied liquid hydrogen as a fuel for aircraft in the 1950s. The USSR and the United States were at a cold. Initiatives a closely guarded secret, especially from the Soviets. The super-secret mission to construct a spy plane propelled by liquid hydrogen was known as Project Suntan. But how can a task as large as creating liquid hydrogen-powered aircraft be concealed? You guessed right. Create a Potemkin settlement. The government created a fictitious community called APIX, which stands for Air Products Incorporated, Experimental, and they picked a secluded, marshy region in Palm Beach County. They even made up a phony population for the town and mapped the area for residential construction. Even though the made-up town of Apix occasionally appears on a map, not much is known about it today. The only thing that still bears the name Apix is a railroad signal box. Number 5. Phony Paris. In order to deceive German bombers during World War I, France wanted to fabricate a picture of Paris. As one of Germany's top targets, the city of Paris frequently received bombing missions from Zeppelins. The French government determined that the greatest defense was to fool the nighttime Zeppelin pilots by presenting them with a fake city. Although radar was there, it was not developed enough to be of much value. All the French had to do was construct a fictitious city close to Paris that appeared real from above. The fake version, which is located close to the north of the genuine one, was created by the French and features electric lighting, duplicate buildings, and a train station. Even a fake Champs-Élysées existed. We shall never know if France's Potemkin community would have been successful in saving lives in Paris. The fictitious City of Lights no longer exists. The war ended before it was finished. Number 4. Amsterdam Town, Shanghai. The 30th of January 2021. The world in Shanghai. Visitors to Shanghai would be shocked to learn that there is a miniature Dutch town there, complete with a windmill, right in the center of an industrial district. Despite being located in Shanghai, the town was created to give the impression that a person is strolling through a picturesque Dutch village on cobblestone streets. 1 city, 9 towns in Shanghai included Holland Town. Each town has a theme and was created to resemble a city from a distinct foreign nation. The project's objective was to build suburban areas across Shanghai to reduce crowdedness. However, not all of these towns turned out to be preferred places for locals to live, and visitors to Shanghai tended to prefer to see buildings, eateries, and attractions with Asian themes rather than exact reproductions of their home cities. Only 6 of the planned villages were actually constructed, and like Holland Village, they usually stood vacant and were primarily visited by couples for wedding photo shoots. Thankfully, Holland Village has gained some popularity and is now home to lots of locals. 3. Manatee, Michigan. Ann Arbor. How is a driverless automobile tested? Self-driving vehicles must be ready for a variety of unforeseen circumstances, including slippery roads, pedestrians crossing the street, and other motorists. However, testing self-driving vehicles where they are intended to operate could be hazardous. How else could you predict how the automobiles will function under actual conditions? The auto industry has developed a remedy. Create a fictitious community that resembles a typical American city. Automakers like Honda, Toyota, Nissan, Ford, and General Motors test self-driving vehicles in Michigan at a facility called Manatee. There are authentic streets, junctions, traffic lights, street signs, parking meters, and even a train crossing in this faux metropolis. And while though we are aware that it exists and that automakers utilize it for testing, it remains somewhat private because open demonstrations and visits are typically prohibited. 2. Ertabat Shah, the Californian Afghan village that is a fraud in the Mojave Desert. There is an army facility called Fort Irwin. The National Training Center is housed at a massive army base that is roughly the size of Rhode Island, where American soldiers rotate for 21 days at a time. While there, soldiers will go to the fictitious village of Ertabat Shah to experience what it's like to live and work there. The made-up community, which is filled by actors selling phony bread and meat on the streets, is a recreation of an Afghan town. Baghdad's satellite footage was used to accurately measure the breadth of the town's streets. While you're inside, it could seem real, but from above, it's obvious that the village is an illusion. The structures may be seen from above as facades supported by wooden frames. 1. New York's Aglo, the winning entry, is not a test or replica town, and it is not there for political purposes. A paper town, sometimes known as a trap town, was created by mapmakers to catch copycatters in the act of copying maps. Mapmakers from the American General Drafting Company created the city of Aglo to foil copycat competitors. Later, the made-up village could be seen on a Rand McNally map. Naturally, General Drafting accused me of plagiarizing. However, McNally asserted that Aglo must be real because a company with that name was situated there. Indeed, the fictitious town's phony site had been where the Aglo General Store now stood. Even though there were no homes or businesses in the neighborhood, the owner had recognized Aglo on the map and chose to open up shop. Consequently, a wholly made-up city appeared to be real for a short period of time.